"Sell me to the fattest, ugliest human you can find," she said. And those were the first words I ever heard from the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen. An alien girl with skin like polished copper and eyes that shifted colors like oil on water, standing in the doorway of my medical clinic on Frontier Station 7, with her skeletal sister unconscious in her arms. I'm Dr. Raymond Foster, and I'd seen desperation before in my 15 years practicing medicine on the edge of human space. But nothing like the wild determination in this girl's face as she stumbled into my waiting room and laid her sister on the floor with a gentleness that contradicted the violence of her opening statement. "I don't sell people," I said automatically, my hands already moving to check the unconscious girl's vitals. Pulse thready, breathing shallow, severe malnutrition evident in every protruding bone. "And I'm definitely not buying anyone, so if you're looking for a slave trader, you're in the wrong place." The copper-skinned girl, she couldn't have been more than 20 in human years, though her species aged differently, grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "No, you don't understand. On my world, when a female has no resources, she can enter contract bond with a male who provides for her family. And I've been asking everyone on this station and they all say, humans don't do contract bonds with aliens. They say humans only do it for something called love, which I don't have time for because my sister is dying. So I thought maybe if I offered myself to someone who couldn't get a bondmate normally, someone fat or ugly or deformed, they might accept out of desperation, and then at least Sarah would have food and medicine." And she was talking faster and faster, her words tumbling over each other, and I realized she was about 5 seconds from complete breakdown. "Stop," I said firmly, using my doctor voice, the one that cut through panic and made people focus. "Your sister is severely malnourished. When did she last eat?" The girl's color-shifting eyes went dark purple, which I would learn meant grief in her species. 4 days ago, maybe 5. I've been giving her my rations, but they're not enough. The station only provides minimum sustenance to refugees, and we're not citizens. We have no status, no rights, and I tried to find work, but nobody hires Kalathi without papers. And the black market work is too dangerous for Sarah to be alone. And her voice finally broke completely. "I just want my sister to live. I'll do anything, be anything. Belong to anyone, please." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw past the copper skin and alien features to something utterly human. A sister willing to sacrifice everything for family. "What's your name?" I asked, already lifting the unconscious girl and carrying her toward my treatment room. "Lisa," she said, following me like a shadow. "Lisa Koth, my sister is Sarah. We're from GalacticPrime. We fled when the war came. We've been on this station for 3 months, and I've tried everything. I've begged and stolen and degraded myself in ways that would horrify you, and nothing works. Nothing is enough." I laid Sarah on the examination bed and started an IV immediately. Nutrients, electrolytes, hydration, the cocktail I'd perfected for treating the constant stream of desperate refugees that passed through Frontier Station 7. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my hands moving with practiced efficiency. "I'm going to stabilize your sister. Then I'm going to feed you both because you're clearly malnourished too, even if you're hiding it better. Then we're going to have a conversation about how human society actually works, because whoever told you about contract bonding gave you some seriously messed up information." Lisa watched me work with those color-shifting eyes, and I saw them cycle through confusion and hope and fear. "You're helping us? Without payment? Without contract?" "It's called medicine," I said, checking Sarah's pupils, her reflexes, building a mental picture of just how close to death this kid had come. "And yes, it costs money, but I didn't become a doctor to let people die in my waiting room because they couldn't pay. We'll figure out the finances later." "But I have nothing," Lisa insisted, and her voice carried this edge of panic like she couldn't process the concept of help without strings. "No money, no skills humans value, no—" "You speak perfect standard," I interrupted. "That's a skill. You clearly have medical knowledge because you kept your sister alive for months on inadequate rations, which means you're smart and resourceful. That's a skill. And you walked into a stranger's clinic and advocated for your sister's life with everything you had, which means you've got courage. That's a skill too." I finished securing the IV and turned to face her fully. "Now sit down before you fall down because I can see you're swaying, and tell me when you last ate." She sat, and it was like watching a marionette with cut strings. "Yesterday, maybe." The days blur together when you're trying not to think about being hungry. I grabbed a nutrition bar from my emergency supplies and tossed it to her. Eat slowly. If you wolf it down, you'll just throw it up. While Lisa nibbled the bar with visible effort to restrain herself, I monitored Sarah's vitals and thought about the situation. Frontier Station 7 was a lawless place, technically under Earth governance but practically run by whoever had the biggest guns and deepest pockets. Refugees flooded through daily, fleeing wars and disasters across a dozen systems, and most fell through the cracks. The Kalathi were a proud species, vaguely humanoid but with that distinctive copper skin and color-changing eyes that reflected their emotions. They'd been devastated by a civil war 3 years ago. Their homeworld shattered, survivors scattered across the galaxy. These 2 girls were just another statistic, another tragedy, except I was tired of watching people become statistics. Tell me about this contract bond thing, I said, pulling up a chair. How does it work on your world? Lissa swallowed a bite of nutrition bar and her eyes shifted to embarrassed orange. A female without family or resources can offer herself in permanent service to a male of status. He provides for her material needs and she provides whatever he requires. Labor, companionship sometimes. She looked away. Other things. It's not slavery exactly because she chooses it, but once bonded she belongs to him until death or he releases her. The picture was getting clearer and more disturbing. And you were willing to do this? To belong to someone? For Sarah? Yes, no hesitation. I'd belong to a monster if it meant she got to live. Something in my chest twisted at the fierce love in her voice, the absolute conviction. Okay, well, good news, humans don't do that. We abolished slavery centuries ago, and any kind of ownership of another person is illegal and morally reprehensible. Bad news. That means you're right that most humans won't enter some kind of contract with you because it sounds way too much like slavery, and we have trauma around that. I leaned forward. But here's the thing, Lissa, you don't need a contract bond. You need a job, a place to live, and legal status on this station. Those are solvable problems. Her eyes went hopeful yellow. How? I need a clinic assistant, I said, the idea forming even as I spoke it. Someone to manage patients, help with basic procedures, keep the place organized. The pay isn't great, but it comes with living quarters upstairs. Small, but there's room for 2, and I can sponsor you for refugee work permits, which will give you legal status. I watched her face cycle through about 15 emotions in 5 seconds. You'd do this for us? But you don't know us. Don't know if I'm competent or trustworthy or... You walked through a station full of predators and criminals with your dying sister, refused to abandon her, and came to a medical clinic instead of just giving up. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. I stood and checked Sarah's monitors, improving already, her young body responding to treatment. The job offer is real. You can start as soon as Sarah's stable enough to be left in the apartment for a few hours. I'll teach you what you need to know. Lisa stood too, and suddenly she was right in front of me, her color-shifting eyes locked on mine and blazing with intensity. Why? She demanded. Everyone else on this station wanted something from me. Money I don't have, services I wasn't willing to provide, degradation I barely survived. You're offering help and asking nothing. Why? It was a fair question, and I thought about lying, about giving her some noble doctor speech, but she deserved honesty. Because 3 years ago my own sister died, I said quietly. Cancer. Treatable if she'd gotten to a real medical facility in time, but we were on a colony world during a supply shortage, and by the time we got her to help, it was too late. And I swore that if I ever had the power to save someone's sister, I would. Because I know exactly what you're feeling right now. That desperation. That willingness to burn the whole universe down if it means keeping them alive. Lisa's eyes went soft silver, and a single tear tracked down her copper cheek. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for everything you've been through, I said. But it's over now. You're safe. Sarah's safe. And I promise you on this station, while you work for me, nobody will ever ask you to degrade yourself or sell yourself or belong to anyone. You're free, Lissa, both of you. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Free. I'd almost forgotten what that word meant. Then, before I could react, she closed the distance between us and wrapped her arms around me in a fierce hug, her face pressed against my chest. Thank you, she whispered, and I felt the vibration of her words through my whole body. Thank you for seeing us as people worth saving. I hugged her back awkwardly. this beautiful, desperate alien girl who'd offered herself to monsters to save her sister, and I felt something shift in my chest, something that had been frozen since my own sister died starting to thaw. "You're welcome," I said. Behind us, Sarah stirred and made a small sound, and Lisa broke away to rush to her side, taking her sister's hand and speaking in rapid Kalathi, her voice breaking with relief. I watched them together and thought about how sometimes the most important decisions we make happen in an instant. The decision to help instead of turn away, to see people instead of problems, to choose compassion over convenience. 3 weeks later, Lisa was running my clinic with terrifying efficiency, her natural organizational skills and quick learning making her indispensable. Sarah was recovering, gaining weight, laughing again, helping out in small ways as her strength returned. The apartment upstairs rang with their voices, with cooking smells from Kalathi recipes Lisa was teaching me to appreciate, with the sounds of a family rebuilding itself. And late one night, when the clinic was closed and we were sitting on the roof watching ships come and go from the station, Lisa turned to me with her eyes shifting through colors I was learning to read, gratitude and warmth and something else, something that made my heart beat faster. "You know what's funny?" she said. "That day I walked into your clinic. I'd convinced myself I needed to find the fattest, ugliest human because they'd be desperate enough to accept my offer, lonely enough to want me even though I'm alien. But then I met you." She smiled, and it was radiant. "And you're not fat, Raymond Foster, and you're definitely not ugly, and you didn't want to own me. You just wanted to help." Turns out the human I needed was the one who saw me as an equal, not a possession. Turns out the alien girl I needed, I said, taking her copper-skinned hand in mine, was the one brave enough to ask for help even when it terrified her, strong enough to sacrifice everything for family, and stubborn enough to challenge every assumption I'd made about living alone forever. Her eyes went brilliant gold, and I'd learned that meant joy, hope, maybe even love. "Is this when you tell me about that human custom you mentioned? The one called love that I said I didn't have time for?" "Maybe," I said. "If you're interested in learning." "I'm interested in everything about you, Dr. Foster," she said. And when she kissed me, her lips tasted like hope and new beginnings and the possibility that sometimes the most desperate moments lead to the most beautiful outcomes, that sometimes offering yourself to fate brings you exactly where you're meant to be, and that sometimes the ugliest situations transform into something precious beyond measure. We pulled apart and she was smiling, really smiling, free and safe and whole, and I realized that 3 years of grief had led me here, to this moment, to this impossible girl who'd walked into my clinic ready to sell herself, and instead found something neither of us had been looking for: a future, a family, a reason to believe that in this vast and often cruel universe, love still finds a way,